Well, let's now transition and dive into a little bit of poetry. Myself, I love poetry, no doubt, but some series of unfortunate incidents led me into what I usually describe to my friends as a failed poet. Now, that's a very damning assessment. The people who are joining me this morning will help me understand a little bit more about it in terms of awakening social activism by using poetry. Ladies, very welcome. Brandy Arinitwe, a poet, IT specialist, and of course, Carolyne Afroetry, founder, Echo Minds. Help me digest this whole thing about poetry. What are you guys doing using poetry?
Poetry is an art we are very passionate about, and I think sometimes it chooses you.
Wow.
So
Now that like, I understand my predicament. It never chose me.
oh, sorry. Maybe you did, but you didn't understand the question. Yeah, so poetry is an art that we all love, but sometimes using a thing that you love and loves you back, not to help the community, is not a good thing. So we chose to use our talents to help the community in all ways we can, and that is advocate for the things we believe are right using our poetry.
Okay. By participating in these literary spaces, you're able to ask the difficult questions sometimes in very simple ways. Are we making progress using poetry to be able to bring to light the issues that we need attended to?
Oh yes, yes, we're actually making a lot of progress, considering how far poetry has come in Uganda and the reception these days, you know, because we have so many poetry activities, you know, so many activists within the poetry circles. So I believe like society is responding to us because we are now using different forms of poetry to communicate and also allow them to understand, you know, what we are trying to communicate to them.
Yeah.
So far it's actually working.
Okay.
Yes.
So the different types of poetry, what are they?
Like there are sonnets, then rhythm, then slam. Sonnets, then rhythm, then slam poetry, then even rap is a kind of poetry.
Wow.
Yeah, and most of them have rules. Even others, every other time someone can come out with, you know, some other type of poetry, because I believe poetry is an art that keeps growing and rules keep breaking and new rules keep getting up every year.
Ever evolving.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would love to take note of how you are evolving into the issues of the day. You seem to be operating underground. We do not hear a lot of what the wave of poetry is doing, unless it is the extreme aspects. For example, Dr. Nyazi using her ability to, you know, speak and paint her thoughts. Isn't that, well, it is extreme, no doubt, but I think legitimate to some people. Why are you underground? You should also be at the forefront.
No, we're not exactly underground. You know, society is kind of funny.
Yeah.
When it's something controversial and perhaps more spelling,
that is what
attracts them.
it takes the day. Yeah.
But we are actually operating, we are very active on social media. I feel like for us as poets, we are actually much more active even than Stella Nyazi.
Yeah.
But because maybe the topics she chooses, perhaps
the controversial one.
Yes, and more followed. I mean, Ugandans like
a lot of that. Are we doing exhibitions, spaces where those who would like to perhaps be part of this particular movement can, well, be accommodated, but most importantly, mentored? The
mentorship is always there. Depends on, really depends on who chooses to mentor who and when, but the mentorship is always there. Poets that have spent time in this business have always taken it up to train more poets, because myself, I was picked up by Philip Matogo. I was out there writing and no one knew about me, and then that is how Carol got me, and then I joined Echo Minds. and here I am. So many other poets. The only thing is most poets, most of the people that write are loners. So they don't get into these spaces, and sometimes you even don't know what you are doing is normal, because society, because I mean the people that are out there in the limelight are not poets. Most of them are musicians, dancers, and all that. So when you are a poet and you're home and you're maybe a little girl growing, you even fear to tell your parents, I am a poet, because I mean they even don't understand this.
I mean, how do you even begin to understand that you are a poet? There are people who speak a lot, and then there are those who speak well. Yeah, you could speak well and not believe you are a poet. Then there's one who really speaks a lot, and then they are transformed into the kind of poet perhaps that they never thought they would be. How do you identify a poet at a very tender age?
Usually it's not just the way they speak, because poetry is a skill. You know, it's the languages intricately designed. It's not like just, you know, coming out and throwing out words. You know, there has to be some kind of meaning, some kind of style to it and sense. Yeah, so children are taught, of course, in school, roses are red, violets are blue. And they, in that kind of line, when they continue, you know, reading poetry and developing that kind of skill, you can see a child, even when they tell them to attempt to write poetry in school, you can easily identify this could be a poet. Because sometimes people speak and they assume it's poetry, but it's not poetry really.
Now, you do take this angle to a point where one has to only believe that to become a poet or to practice poetry, you've got to be taught to do it so that you can go with the principles and how it is done. But let's take an example. Chris Higenyi, growing up in Butaleja, you've not gone to school, but you have the ability to paint pictures of the society that you're in, and you're able to speak out at any given opportunity in a good way, sometimes enticing way, because poetry must be able to draw people in into what you're trying to communicate, not so. So shouldn't that one be, well, called a poet? Before they even go to under instruction? Because
one of the best things about poetry is telling stories in a better way.
In a better way.
Yes.
All right.
So you can use any language, by the way, to do poetry. Literally any language. I believe you can even use your body to do poetry.
How about that? All right. Yeah. Tell us, how do we use bodies to do poetry?
I mean, like the people that do sign language, you are literally using your arms to tell a story. Like, like there is rhyme in your hands, and then you're telling poetry to people that cannot listen to verbal conversations, but they see your hands moving, they see your body moving.
Dance is poetry.
Yes, even playing the drum.
Playing a drum.
Playing a drum, telling riddles, because we also have to go back to the oral tradition, the old ways of poetry. We can tell, like, you know, stories, you know, and just play the drum, dance to the rhythm. It's also a form of poetry, because poetry is music. It can also be a dance.
All right. A gentleman called Ken Gavin is quoted here saying, if we long for change, we have to find new forms of language and ways of interpreting the world. It is a notion you are driving to. Can poetry be used as an effective form of activism?
It has been used in the past, and it has won in the past. And I think we can continue using it. And in the African society, I want a lot to use Africa, because I'm African and very proud at that. In history, when people were going to wars, they used to rant, to chant poetic rhymes, and to keep them energized. So, and with this, they won those battles.
That's right.
Yes. The slaves, as they were being taken and ferried, used poetry to keep alive inside them. Yes. And it has grown with time. People fighting for their rights have always chanted things they even don't know are poetry. poetry, but have helped. So if I have this space and I have this talent and I can go out there and do what I really believe in, I think I can use my poetry to really stand for the cause I believe in.
That is true. Because we also have to talk about like the poets of the civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement.
When they cropped up, and they were able to, you know, write the poetry about, you know, racism and, you know, injustice. People were able to respond, and it was able to create some kind of movement.
I think we can rightly say that perhaps the most famous poem is I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King, not so?
Yes.
Well, we shall keep it to the greatest speech in the world, but now that I've understood what you guys are up to, I now know that it is the greatest poem rather, that I've ever heard. All right, what is the structure of the poetry movement in Uganda? What are you achieving? What are you pushing? What are you petitioning? Who is even listening to you? In terms of government officials, for the activism that you're pushing, are you speaking to them?
Okay. First of all, like government officials, there is a lot of controversy in public offices. A lot. And even ministries that would be backing poetry, I think don't understand that we fall in the docket.
That
or
is the Ministry of Gender,
yes,
Labor,
Gender,
Social
yes,
Development.
or even they understand, but they don't want to understand.
Wow.
Actually, was it last year when I think when we were coming out of the COVID, you know, thing, well, we had to come out and, you know, join the other artists. And we came out as poets with the association.
Yes, National Council Culture Forum.
National Culture Forum. And we were trying to understand poetry. Explain to us.
Explain to us what this is.
Yeah, so we are trying to explain to them, like just like musicians, like filmmakers, you know, all those other art forms. Also, as we have a voice and we have something going on.
Something going on. Could that be down to the fact that poetry as a form of expression, the languages, and even within the set curricula for education, including literature, we are not making the transition from school to having it as an effective vehicle in driving whatever change agenda that you are pushing? Is there a need to look at how this is being done? If need be, are you offering any blueprints?
Yes, because at the moment we have a poetry association of Uganda that is registering members of late, and people are registering. And I think even poets themselves have created groups within themselves, like ours, the Echo Minds, who push themselves further to be seen. Because maybe if we get seen, maybe if we get into your faces, you will get to understand that poetry is a form of art that needs to be accepted. Because with poetry, you can actually explain a lot. With poetry, you can teach a lot. With poetry, you can even entertain more than very many art forms. So, I mean, I think poetry is the thing.
It's the thing. Songwriters borrow from poets. Even the musicians like to quote poets.
Yes.
Even filmmakers use poets.
That's right.
I feel like we are so much more important, even though they don't acknowledge it.
Talking about that, I'm emboldened personally to be talking to poets, and I'm beginning to feel like I shouldn't have considered myself a failed poet. Now, first, give us something. Let me hear you go into this lyrical adventure. Can you recite for us anything that you feel passionate about right now on national television, and hopefully that can inspire a lot more people out there to adopt and use poetry as a form of change movement? Let's go.
Okay. Entebbe bwoba zigula Dubai mudungu omutali chibira. As if there are no forests in Budongo, or the wood in Budongo doesn't make nice furniture. Kuba Dubai waliyo ba carpenter, or we don't sire the same carpenters. tuli badongo oba just batukwata bwongo kati twefumbanga bakafodongo. When you go to apply for a grant or tell people you are an investor, they want you in a different color, not mine. Even lighter or darker is not accepted. You have to be whiter, but not like my skin. Maybe because we don't have the money, even if we have the money, they don't believe we can have the skills because we are African like them. Go to your village and say you have come to help people with different abilities, those you call people with disabilities. They will always believe there is a person with a different skin, a savior coming in your back that is to support them and not you because you are black just like them. Go to your district council or whatever you call it to ask for a gig, bid, that they call it professionally. You know, we don't like professional words, whatever they call it. They will want to see a person in a different color because you are black. You can't bid. This thing has to be done by a person who was made in China and say you were made in Uganda. Anyway, what is Uganda? Uganda was something that some drunk men on their cigars sitting in a...
Wow, I've been taken in and I'm forgetting I'm moderating a show. Wow, would you like to use some 30 seconds?
30 seconds, yes.
Please.
The colonialists came with a rifle and a Bible, taught us how to pray with our eyes closed to an unseen God who hates our dark skin while they plundered our resources and degraded our once rich soil. Years later, we raised the colonial Bible higher than our conscious minds. We condemn and curse in the name of Jesus with the patches of indolence on our clothes. See, the colonialist religion confused us, made us...
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Brandy Arinitwe, thank you for bringing the things to us. And of course, thank you to Carolyne Afroetry for ensuring that we do understand this a little bit more than we previously did. Personally, I do not know. I won't even attempt to pull off a poem as I close. I can only speak to my usual. I love your company every day, no doubt. You make us big, and we hope we're giving you the best of what you need. We're taking a break. Morning at NTV continues. Let's go into some poetry behind the scenes.